Hey, so welcome. This session is all about health practices for reducing stress. We're also going to look at some health habits you may have that are really doing you no favors when it comes to managing or reducing stress. So, if you're like me, you may have grown up with the same tendencies that I know I have, and it's things like, when you're busy or things get super stressful, the fallback plan that I grew up with and definitely found myself implementing in my own life several times is just like, when things get stressful or busy, that's when it's okay to skip the workout. That's when it's okay to consume extra sugar. That's when it's okay to drink extra caffeine, all that stuff that's like, it's really actually making your stress worse. It's adding fuel to the fire. But for some reason, it's like the survival mode of being stressed or busy meant that it was okay to dig my hole even further with stress. And I feel like this is how a lot of us operate too. And it's like this normal thing that we kind of grew up as feeling like this is okay. And that it almost like the stressful or the busyness justifies you digging your hole a little bit deeper into stress. And for me, the only way that I've really found to be able to pull out of that a little bit, those habits, let's call them, that cycle, is really pausing and being mindful, like, about the fact, like, am I stressed here? Before I go, relieve myself for a workout or indulge in the thing or drink extra caffeine, like, am I stressed? Am I just busy? And that's makes it okay. And asking myself, like, if I am stressed, if I am busy, if I'm extra, like, got a lot on me and my schedule physically, like, if I've got a lot on me, why does that make it okay to dig my hole deeper and add an extra load on top of me? Because if I'm really for getting out of stress, for feeling better again, or out of this stress mode, I should do what I can to pull myself out of that sooner rather than later. And so I've really had to try to, basically stop myself before the habit, like, tendencies take place, and just really asking myself more questions on, like, why am I wanting to do that? Why do I feel so rushed or busy? Why does that suddenly make it okay to, like, not care? What I'm fueling my body with, how I'm treating it, all of that. And even being more aware, like, okay, if I am stressed or if I am really busy, if I am having that extra load, then I need to be more proactive to be like, stay on top of my supplements or drink my green drink, superfood nutrients, like, instead of just fueling it with junk food, basically. So let's talk about a couple of things that might be habits that we typically do. Like, it's a very common thing for people to turn to in stress, that are more like coping mechanisms when it comes to stress, and how they might be hindering you, so that you just understand, like, this is why I'm talking about this. Like, might not be your best way to handle stress, if you really are serious about feeling better and feeling less stress and not having that cycle through and again and again. So one of the first things is sugar. So sugar is one of those things that I've really tried to get better at not having, because I did grow up, like, with a sweet tooth, and, like, I love sugar, and I know I can definitely, like, eat too much of that, and it's not good for my health. And so that's been one of the things that for our family I've really worked on, like, recreating recipes that are not involving sugar, so that we can still have, like, healthy desserts, but not have to have the side effects of sugar in our life. And sugar does not do any favors when you're trying to reduce or manage stress. Sugar is really bad about weakening your body's ability to respond to stress. It can also lead to anxiety, and it prevents how you deal with stress. Like, it prevents you from being able to handle it can cope with it in a healthy manner. You will feel good immediately, yes, because you'll have that high. So as far as being able to buffer the stress, so it feels a little less inconvenient at the time, yes, but it has worse side effects for your mind, your brain, mentally, and those are long-term. And so the quick buffer that you experience, that is why you want to go to sugar, is not worth the long-term experience that you're going to have from going to sugar for coping with stress. So physically, you just don't want to go there, even though it may temporarily like alleviate it. Caffeine is commonly used to help sometimes cope, but just pull through, like be able to take on the extra load, push our bodies, stuff like that. But you really want to be careful about how much caffeine you consume, because it does elevate cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone. So if you are getting stressed, you want to be able for that hormone to come down, to cortisol, to come back down naturally. But if you are continually fueling your body with things that spike that cortisol and cause that stress hormone to go into action, your body is getting trained to go into action, and it makes it harder for you to come back into that state of rest and calm. And you can have like side effects start to occur where your body is staying in a more stressed zone, even though there's no reason for it to be stressed. So you really want to think about, you know, what you're fueling, what you're putting into your body, what you're doing. It is fueling your body. So are you fueling your body to like stay in a heightened stress state, or are you trying to fuel your body so that it can cope well with stress, do like what it's supposed to do with stress, come back down good from stress, not cycle back through and have more stress because of the way you chose to cope with it? All of that matters. So that's a couple of things that like are off the top of my mind. Like these are things that we commonly do with stress as we try to cope with it, with like sugar, caffeine, food, skipping that workout. You definitely want to get the workout in though, because it's really good for your body to have that motion. It can help you move those emotions and that stress feeling out. Think about it this way. Your body is 70% water, I think. That's what it is. And what happens to water when it doesn't move, when it stands still? It becomes stagnant. And your body is very similar to water in that way, that like with more motion, the more it moves, the more fresh and alive it feels, which is gonna help you move out of a stress state. Like stress states are not alive and fresh, and they don't feel good. They feel stagnant, they feel suffocating, they feel just closed off. So motion is a great way to move that, move yourself physically, get everything moving, but emotionally, it also helps you move out of that stress state. So physical movement shouldn't be something that you're nixing because you're stressed or you feel busy, which is causing your stress. It should be something that you implement because it will help alleviate the stress long term. A couple of other things, like we've talked about a bunch of things that's like don't. So going into some do's though, some great things that you can do for your body that's going to help you to work through the stress and support it and fuel it for a really good, like being able to handle the stress. So one would be drinking lots and lots of water. Drink half your water, half your body weight in ounces in water at least every day. And that's just a great way to help your body detox, like through urine and stuff. When your body is physically overloaded and then you mentally overload it with stress or other things, you have a compounded, like physically you're overloaded and stressed, and mentally and emotionally you are, and that can really exponentially like make that stress even bigger than it is. And what's interesting is your body and your mind are very much more linked together than I think a lot of Western culture would like to give credit for. But when you help your body physically detox, de-stress, like release, relax, your mind and emotions also follow. So that's one way that you can support that. It's another thing like to think about, just like maybe reducing your toxic load with the cleaners you use. Don't have candles, things like that, because that is going to weigh down and overload your body system. And that is one thing you can do for your body that's going to help even with your stress, because it's one less thing your body has to go take care of for you. A supplement, if you want to call it, I get the ashwagandha root powder. You can order it online. It's really, really great. It's a plant in northern Africa, but this plant, ashwagandha root powder, lowers cortisol levels. It helps with fighting anxiety and mood swings and some depression. It can help increase your energy levels. So it's a really great food that you can like be mixing up in like your smoothies, your coffee, like so many different things that you might have on a normal basis. You can add this powder into it. I've been using it for years, and it's really great for helping, especially if you feel like you are someone who does suffer from maybe higher cortisol levels or stress or chronic stress. Like, do what you can, because there's been lots of studies on this one plant, how well it works with helping people to reduce their stress, their cortisol levels by a good percent. So that's a really great supplement you can start using. Getting enough sleep, getting enough adequate sleep. Really, sleep can make a world of difference, and being stressed or non-stressed is really on a matter of like, did you get sleep? Did you get good sleep? How much sleep? And so a couple of things like just to help promote sleep is to avoid blue light 1 to 2 hours before bed. Blue light, really, also you want to be careful around it anyway. You might want to consider just going ahead and getting blue light glasses, because the blue light blocking glasses, because blue light triggers stress. So like they've monitored like the pathways on the brain and like what your brain activity is like with blue light. And even though you think, oh, I'm just scrolling through whatever newsfeed, or I'm just looking at this or reading a story even off of like your iPhone, I'm relaxing in bed, your mind is like going so fast. It's actually, it looks like it does when it's under a stress. So your mind, even though you say, I'm relaxed and I'm reading this in bed, your mind is functioning like it is under stress. And that's not great for sleep, and it's really not great for your stress level if you're trying to reduce stress in your life. So maybe consider blue light blocking glasses. I think it cut out there on me. Anyway, get some blue light blocking glasses, or just like avoid electronics an hour before bed. A couple of other things you can do is like some positions. So doing things physically can help basically trigger like your mind to say, oh, you know, relax, it's safe now. So a position that I like to do during the day at different times that I might feel stressed or just feel like I need a good relaxation or before bed is just to prop my legs up against a wall, and you're going to sit basically with your legs like up against the wall and your bottom and back flat against the floor. So, and your lower back should kind of touch the floor and kind of just sink into the floor. And you want to sit like that for a good 5 minutes or so. And that position signals to the rest of your mind and body, it's a safe position. I'm safe here. It's not in a fight or flight position. So in that position, it's a great way to just rest and let the stress levels come down. Man, that pollen is bad. So positions like that, deep breathing exercises, yoga is really good for bringing stress levels down, helping all of that to come down just by your body, changing the way it is approaching and positioning itself to say I'm safe and I'm calm, and that's going to help with mental stress or emotional stress. So I have some yoga stuff that I like to do before bed sometimes. It's like a wind down yoga, and so sometimes I'll do that because it just feels like it really helps and aids with sleep, as well as just getting a little bit of motion right before bed to get the flow and state. Another thing I do, like when I start my mornings, is I have a gratitude practice, and I will link to the actual journal that I created, because what I found myself doing was not really following along with the gratitude journal and some practices that I would get, because it didn't work exactly for me as a mom with lots of little kids. But this method has helped me to be able to connect with the gratitude emotionally, not just mentally. And it's a very short practice that I can fit in no matter how rushed really during the day. I can make the mental time to actually practice it. And it also helps me to stay really clear on my priorities for the day and for my life. To get clear on what matters most to me in my life before going about and doing what matters most to others. And if you find yourself being someone that maybe can easily fall into that, where you're going about doing life and living or prioritizing everything that maybe matters a lot to a lot of people that really should not have a say maybe, or it doesn't really matter what they think is most important when it's not most important to you. So it just helps me to keep really clear on that, and not, prioritize stuff as that really doesn't matter to me though, but I'm told it should, so I'm trying to make it fit into my day. Probably something I can nix off the list of things for today. So that's that gratitude practice, and I'll link the journal below so that you can have it for free. And that's just a couple of things that you can do to help with the just the practices for reducing, managing the stress, countering stress habits, and being aware when you're in stress and that you might be going towards some of the stress habits really helps a ton there. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. I do use essential oils, so I use doTERRA oils, and I'm going to share a little bit more on what ones I use for what and when later. So.